What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Weekly Dose of Dano TV. We have this 2-hour live special for everybody that Sid and I put together because we just had so much fun on our last one. And the energy and the conversations that we were talking about were just such an alignment that we had to bring our friends on this time around for a 2-hour special to really dive deep into everything that we need in order to break the barriers and to go beyond the barriers that may be present in our lives and how to crush them. So Sid, man, what do you have to say to everybody before we get started?
You know, what I want to say is no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, stay here, stay with us and be ready for this. If you're going through anxiety or depression or anger or guilt or shame, this is going to lift your spirits, and peace is the power to live by. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for you suggested this. You said, man, we need to come together and talk about this longer. So everybody give Sid and everybody else, all the special panelists that we hand selected, give them all the credit because they show up every single day in their lives, whether they want to or not, whether they're experiencing happiness, sadness, and everything in between. They have shown up for each and every one of us today. So give them their props. To my positivity posse, I love you guys. I'm so happy for you to be here and to have this special episode for y'all. But let's hit this show opener, and then we'll be right back with some of this content that you've been waiting all week for. So here it is, everybody. Thank you so much. And if you're watching live or on the replay on Facebook or YouTube, please leave your comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, all of it, because we want to hear about it here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. So let's get it, everybody. Thank you so much, and let's get started for today. Everyone, so much for being here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. I just want to talk about a few comments really quick. We have Christopher Casson here. Hello there. What's going on, Chris? Nice to see you. Jeanette with the hashtag Positivity Posse. Lou with the hashtag Positivity Posse. And Misty, who was here as well, but in the backstage, just sharing all of this awesome energy that we have decided to cultivate together here today. So, Sid, I need you to really, I don't even think I asked you this yet, but why is it that you wanted to have this special episode today?
Well, the last time we were here, Chris, who's here watching, said hello there. Chris asked for a 2-hour show. So that was it. It was just in the moment where someone asked and I'm a yes. When someone asks for something, if it's around peace, if it's going to move the needle, I say yes, and then I show up. And so that was the beginning, and getting it started, see where we go, and inviting all these different people in to have this conversation. I think it's important for us to have conversations like this because conversations rule the nation.
And all of the people that are here today, I know I said it again, I've said it once, but I'm going to say it again. Everybody here is an expert and master in their field. So just to have, like you said, everybody that's willing to have the conversation, but the people that are well equipped to talk about these conversations just makes the conversation just that much sweeter and just really, really great overall sense of well-being. So, we have to have our time together, Sid. And, what I want to talk about really quick before we really dive into the heart of everything is the emotional intelligence that we need to have for whatever we're going through in our lives, right? Because a lot of people let outer circumstances determine their inner world, right? And if that's the case, then you can look at the news, you can look at social media, you can look at maybe your social influence, and that'll really get you down. So I want to talk about what are your strategies in order to really not let the outer world define our happiness?
Well, number one, for me, it's discipline. And discipline to me, one, I've cultivated that as an athlete. That's why I really love working with athletes, because they already have had a discipline of some sort, you know, whether, especially when you start to move up like college, and then you go beyond college, and now it's even high school athletes now have to have discipline to be at the top of their game, because so many people are playing these different sports. So that's the number one thing to me. And for me, discipline, I'm a disciple of peace. So my discipline is peace, and I've returned to it over and over. So anything that begins to take me away from that, I can redirect, and so that's the first thing to me, regardless of all the other tools, meditation, yoga, uh, taking long walks on the beach, or whatever it is. If you don't have the discipline to do it, it won't work for you at all. So it all comes back to discipline.
I agree with you 100%. And I kind of see that time and time again when it comes to the basketball court, because every week I do play in a men's league, or even if I just go with my friends to the park, you have these kids or adults even that are trash talking one another, right? That's fine. But when you let it get to you and you don't practice that self discipline, like you said, to react to it and to give into that, then that's when fights start to break out. And unfortunately, something more severe could happen, has happened before too. But it's like you said, when you don't have that discipline, that is the number one thing that we need. But actually, it may be number one, but I want to bring up another piece too, which is awareness, right? Because if you don't have the awareness that you're actually doing the same actions over and over again, whether it's on the basketball court, the football field, in the corporate setting, wherever you're at, you have to be conscious of what's going on in your life, right? So if you're receiving just negative things happening to you, negative people, well, you kind of have to be aware of it in order to change it. So I would say that is definitely up there with discipline. And I'm just so happy, again, to have this conversation with you. Sid, what are you looking forward to the most out of today?
Well, just hearing other people's perspectives and being able to chime in on directing us forward into peace. We have relationships are so key to us moving humanity forward. We're all in relationship. We're in relationship with people. We're in relationship with things in our lives. I have a relationship with my wife. I have a relationship with you. I have a relationship with almost everybody that's here to speak tonight. And so my relationships with people, I always think of it like this. Here's what a relationship is. How do I relate to someone, and where are we sailing to? Right. So
Mm.
we relate to this in some way. And now where are we taking this ship? And that's what I love about this. The people that I'm in relationship with, a lot of these people are 100% on the path to peace.
And I'm just so happy that we have started to do that, to go on that path of peace, right? Because all of the things that we talk about today, whether it's the power of relationships, like you said, and success, whether it's breaking down the barriers to come together as one human race, which is another topic we're going to be talking about the power of writing and healing, and also about how to move through excuses, through all of this stuff. If we don't have the discipline, like you said earlier, to apply it to our lives, and just the overall awareness to go on this path, or this dedication to better ourselves, then what's the point of learning it, right? Because how many times have you heard somebody, probably you've heard time and time and again, where you try to teach somebody something and they said, oh, I already knew that. Oh, I already knew that. But if you don't apply it, what's the point of knowing that knowledge?
Right. That's so true. It really, what it comes down to, if you know where the mark is, the definition of sin is to miss the mark. So now all of a sudden, if you know it and you're not doing it, technically that is the sin. So
Yeah.
there's that for those that don't want to be sinners. Well, then if you've read the Bible, or you read the Quran, or you read the Torah, and you know that peace is the way, and you're not doing it, yes, you are sinning, because you now know. Someone who doesn't know, until they know, they're not really sinning. They're just moving through life with, as you said, a lack of awareness, and so
Mhm.
then all of a sudden it's like, okay, how do we get people to, once they are aware, to continue to execute? And that's discipline. So I'm still coming back to that.
Yeah, I love it. And I never even knew know that too, that you know, if you actively are choosing to do what you know is best, and that's considered sin. I know as a young man for myself, I do implement that practice of, you know, trying not to look at porn or talking bad on other people, and like easy things like this that you would think like, oh, I can do that at the drop of a hat. It's really challenging too. So thank you for bestowing that knowledge upon me and to everybody that's watching. So let's just talk about a few comments. We have Soli Dina. She says, hi, everyone. We have Christopher Rouse here. He says, peace all the way. That's my I am statement. I am peace. And this is a great way to really contribute to the episode. If there's an I am statement that you love so much that you want everybody else to know about, please drop it in the comments as well. Because not only are you giving other people that knowledge, but you're pouring into yourself by actually typing that on the comment section, you know? So we have Shane here. What's going on? Shane, so lovely to see you. Hope everything has been well with you. We have Christopher again, and then we have Lou that says, so excited for the episode. So am I. I can't stop talking about it because it's really beautiful how everybody came together and in the time that we did. So we're going to have to bring on in just a few minutes, everybody. We're going to bring on Marc Hoberman and Misty Lee Riston to talk about the power of writing and healing, because they both have experienced, I'm going to let them talk about this, but they've both experienced really traumatic situations, and they've written multiple books and helped other people write their stories to help them achieve the peace that Sid was talking about earlier, and how to really kind of capitalize on their story. So if you are an author, or if you are a writer, or you want to share your story out with the world, these two legends are some of the best people that I know in order to talk about this topic. But Sid, man, what I don't even know where to start for today. I'm so happy that we're starting, but I don't even know like what it is that we are supposed to be gaining from this. Like, so what do you hope it is that the viewers are going to gain from this?
Well, just another vantage point of how you can bring peace into your life. Like, we've got Misty coming on here, and Misty edited my next book, The Autobiography of a Human, you know, and that's how we met. We started working together to edit the book. And then we're working on 11 books that make up the story of Crossroads, which is trilogy that runs through those 11 episodes in the book and the movie and all those different things. So I'm excited for people to gain access to different ways to strengthen peace in their life. You know, by, like you said, having the awareness, making conscious choices, knowing what are you putting on after this to go watch when you have a choice of what to put in your mind. Yeah,
exactly. And that's why I kind of tend to stay away from, like, when it comes to media that's not empowering, you know, like American Horror Story. Like, if everybody's into like horror movies or things like that, you know, is not serving you. Or watching fights right on the street on social media, just be careful what it is that we are programming into our minds. But like you said, when you do start to write down through the power of writing, we can write in any direction it is that we want. We can do, you know, what is it that our dream life is going to look like? Or if we have to go through some complex emotions such as grief and anger, how the power of writing is going to help us with that as well. So I think it's time to just bring them on. We do have a few minutes to go. You know, we are on schedule. So let's bring everybody on. Sid, final thoughts before we bring Misty and Marc on.
just kick back, enjoy the ride.
There it is, short, sweet, and to the point. And to everybody watching, please leave your comments, leave your great energy, questions, anything that you need to do to contribute, because this is not a passive episode. This is an episode where we are all coming together as one in order to raise the vibrations of ourselves, but also planet Earth as well. So everybody, please, in the comments, welcome Marc and Misty onto the show. What's going on, everybody? How you guys doing today?
How are you guys doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
Amazing.
Excited to be here.
Oh yes, and if you've been watching Weekly Dose of Dano for some time now, you will see all of these three familiar faces, fourth familiar face, right? Because of the host too. But every time you guys have come on, it's just been chock full of great knowledge, that I've learned from as soon as we got off. So I'm so honored and thrilled to have you both here. You as well, Sid, and to my Positivity Posse, thank you for being here. So I'm going to start out the segment with what I was talking about earlier, because I didn't want to give away your stories. And Marc, I know yours was with epilepsy, and Misty, yours more recently is about, going through grief and anger and how can we use the power of writing in order to move through it. So Misty, I'm going to give it to you first. Can you talk about how the writing process has helped you with complex emotions like grief, anger, and anything else you want to share?
Of course. Well, I'm Misty or Misty Lee, and I run Campground TBD. It's a healing campground in Western Arkansas, and it's part of Campground TBD Publishing, where I've been able to help over 200 authors publish. And I still don't consider myself a publisher. It's more walking on that path with people to handle big emotions, which led me from my old job at financial services, very financially secured, but it wasn't fulfilling to me. And so I had to switch my return on investment, so to speak, to being able to think of a new way to live the life I wanted without knowing how I was going to get there. So I started writing the life I did want and just skipping over how I was going to get there. And I call that quantum writing. Then I started tying that into some of the work I do with people for sobriety, or I've been in helping people through large grief for many years in my last career. So I started using writing in more detail, and then opened our healing space here in Arkansas. And we really drilled down on how you could use the power of writing to build a muscle that most of us don't exercise. And it's that muscle of just daring yourself away from the painful the story for a minute. Just daring yourself to go to the place of peace and to have the discipline to do it every single day, just so that you can build that muscle memory. So when life comes in and gives us a little bit of a, that's more than I can swallow, that writing practice is already in place, and our imagination will go to the happy places versus the unhappy places. And then last summer, my son passed away, and I was blessed to live on the campground. And I just watched my Facebook memory from 1 year ago yesterday, and it says, today's day one. I'm going to go through my own coursework now. And I shut down all the consumption outside of my own grief work that I'd done in the past, and I started writing. And I find it to be a miraculous way to manifest not just emotional peace, but the life that I'm wanting to live outside of my pain. So I have a lot to say about writing. I don't want to take my whole 20 minutes. So I'll turn it over to you for a little bit, Marc. That I think writing can solve just about any issue that we need help walking into or walking through. It doesn't make things disappear, but it definitely gives us that tool to walk through something with strength.
Beautiful. Now, Marc, I know you have a similar story with using writing in order to overcome all of the obstacles that's going on within us. So share a little bit about your expertise when it comes to writing and finding peace.
So first of all, as my students used to say, what she said. So Misty was right on point. I had a seizure behind the wheel of a 1977 Ford Mustang when I was about 16 and a half, and came home with a diagnosis of epilepsy. And until my memoir came out, when I was 54 years old, maybe 9 people knew, and 2 of those were doctors. So I was ashamed. I was scared. And even as an adult, when I was teaching, before there were HIPAA laws, they would give you boxes of kids in your homeroom. And I had kids in my classes who had epilepsy, and I saw their gums bleeding, and I knew they were on, it said Dilantin, which is the same drug I was on. And how bad of me to be a teacher and not say to them, hey, I know what you're going through. But I saw it as a weakness. And lo and behold, I decided to write a book about it. I started it way earlier. Life got in the way, and I stopped writing. And my son Scott had irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and was suffering from it emotionally and physically. And I was able to help him through it. My wife said, you're doing a great job helping Scott, but you seem so methodical about it and so unemotional about it. And I said, well, because I lived it as a teen. And I have to tell you, when you write, when I was done writing the memoir, I said to my wife, Ivy, I said, if nobody sees this book, this is the best thing I've ever done, because the shame melted away and it became my superpower, because my mantra is don't let your struggles define you. You define you. But like Misty said, it should be a daily thing. And I was reminded of this. I haven't said this on any of the shows. I had forgotten that all 33 years I taught, the do now assignment in my class was journaling. Dear journal, I'm angry with my parents when. So if I was doing Romeo and Juliet, it always had a tie to the story. But these kids, when I told them time was up, you thought I was saying smash your cell phone. They just wanted to write. They wanted to emote. And as adults, and I'm sure everyone can attest to this, I have done it before. A lot of my friends will write emails to their soon-to-be ex-wife, or they would write certain things down, this whole long thing, and then they hit cancel. They felt better just writing it. They didn't need to send it. They didn't need to start another argument. So when Misty says, I think that writing cures all, she's being too kind. It is unbelievable. It can change, seriously, it can change the world. This saying of the pen is mightier than the sword is a lot stronger than people think. And I just felt a weight, the sort of Damocles, was over my head. And just writing, I didn't know how people were going to react, but so many people, I mean, Sid earlier mentioned relationships, and I love his definition of what a relationship is, how you relate. Well, I've had relationships online on social media with people who read the book, who said, I felt the same way. I always felt ashamed. And I'm part of epilepsy groups. My book is called Adversity Defeated, Turn Your Struggles into Strengths. It's not a book about epilepsy. It's about overcoming adversity. My adversity just happened to be epilepsy. So I cannot say enough how important writing is, well beyond being an English teacher. I've helped people, I've co-authored books and whatnot. There's nothing better.
Wow.
I have a question. Question for Misty is, writing cures all. And when I hear things, I'm like, all right, truth or perspective. And when I remember we first met, everything had just happened for you. And here we are, you're going to edit my book. Now, was it writing or reading that began to shift that on a different level, at least from our relationship, or is it even in the space of editing for you that creates that same feeling of writing?
Well, there's definitely a synergy when I'm reading other, and I'm back to what Dano said, when I'm reading other high vibration work, which is why I'm very specific about what I will edit and what I won't, because I don't want to absorb the energy of anything that's not something I want to be a part of. So there definitely is being very clear with my vibration and who I allowed in my space, which would have been the reading and the editing. And also that I had already been writing. I started writing a few years ago. So by going back and reading my own writing, the reading and writing process was making the full circle. And then reading your writing was helping me stay in that vibration. So I think it's a combination of the synergy of all of those pieces. But I still want to impress that starting a writing practice before you need a writing practice gives you like the decoder when you get to that moment that you need it. Because we write, there's a lot of secrets in this pen if you allow yourself to write every day, just anything that you took note of in your day. So the more that you can go back and read those things and then make sure you're only consuming content that's going to keep you at that vibration to be ready to receive the energy you want, whether it's peace or a new job or a better relationship, but staying up there and being really mindful of what you're reading. So to answer your question, it was both reading and writing.
Awesome.
Yeah. And, I love the fact, Misty, that you just mentioned that too. Another way I'm going to rephrase it is that when we write or when we go about our everyday lives, we are constantly, if you are programmed this way, we're constantly beating on that drum of, negativity, or let's say if there's somebody who wants to manifest, an abundance of money, but everything that they're doing is to beat the drum of lack and scarcity, then we'll never be prepared emotionally or physically to receive everything it is that we want. So it's like you said, when you change that power of writing to a different direction or a different perspective to what it is that you do want to consume, then that's when the magic starts to happen in your writing. And when you're able to use that as a release, then we can change the tune to our drum, so to speak. So it's really important that everybody does understand what it is and how it is that writing affects our life. And Marc, I kind of want to go to you with this next question or this next strategy. It's all nice and great to talk about, how to write or what writing does, but do you have any, examples or any favorite practices that you do in order to write at a high caliber?
Sure. So I believe in the less is more initial approach. You write down the buzzwords, because if I write the buzzword, that time at the baseball game, I could look at that and then I could write for 4 hours about that because I know the important pieces. So you start, some people like to go big and then chop it down. I like to start small, build it up, and then chop it down because those key phrases have to be in there. And I just want to say that when you do that, it becomes so therapeutic. Look, I would have seizures without my medication. The medication was therapeutic, but it pales in comparison for the person I have become with the writing and how therapeutic that was.
And I'm gonna shoot that same question over to Misty too, because like I said, and I do want to change the tail end of what I said, because I did say, writing at a high caliber, but there might be somebody out there that wants to get their butt into that chair and write, but they don't know what to do. So Misty, what practices are your favorite in order to actually practice that style of writing?
It's like we planned the assist, because the question I wanted to answer slightly different variation, and you just led me right into it. So my advice is to write first, like no one is going to read it. Like he said, come up with your baseball game, funny story, that song from the 1970s. But don't try to submit your final draft as your first rough draft. People seem to be afraid to come up with something ridiculous to start with. But when you have an urge to write, just write. Don't grade your paper to start the writing process. And then you can go back and take those simple sentences that day at the baseball park, and you can begin to add who was there, what did it look like, what did it smell like. And then eventually you'll have another set of eyes who can be the editor. But writing the story is not the same as polishing it and shining it and getting it ready for packaging. So just being willing to write the messy story is where some of the most amazing stories come from, when the authors quit trying to make it perfect from the start.
Sid,
Let me jump in on that.
Yeah.
Actually, I have them sitting right here. So I have this, and I don't know how many people have these, but I have these die that have different words on them, like every one of them. So like this one says faith, time, nature, gift, express. This one, which is like all the other die are all white. This one is colored, and so it says work, money, soul, love, family, work. I said that. Love. Yeah. So it's got that. Now, what I did in the beginning of really strengthening my ability to write, I would roll the die, and I think it's 9 die. And then whatever's up there, you have to write on each one of those words around the main word. So I did that for 365 days. Next thing you know, I'm tapped into just writing. I think for me as a writer, one of my books I wrote in 3 days, 11 chapters, and published it in 22. Part of that is I have that muscle is there. And so when I start writing, I go, it's just, I'm tapped into it. And so and I like what you said, Marc, because that's it. I have buzzwords that if I have a word and it's like, all right, we're going to, Misty and I are doing it. We're like, all right, it's time to write about the journey. And we know what point in the journey, and then the rest of the color comes to it. So I think I really like that you brought that buzzword thing up. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Marc, where'd you come up with that buzzword idea or that strategy? Did you practice it? Did you hear from somebody?
Me? Oh, okay. Yeah. It just worked for me because Dano knows me better than anybody on here. I get a lot of ideas. You don't want to be in my head, not without medication. I mean, there's a lot going on here. I mean, you guys talking, I'm like, okay, let's make this 3 hours. I want to say this and this. So I needed that to make me stable. But to Misty's point, I have told people when I've helped co-authored books or edit them, listen, vomit on that page. Give me everything. It's my job to make it cohesive, but I can't I can't find the finer points if you don't write the finer points. So don't worry about, I don't care about grammar. Don't worry that I was an English teacher. Don't worry about any of that. You just write that, because to Dano's point, he originally said to write at that high caliber. High caliber stories will find high caliber editors. So some of these people I co-authored for, what powerful stories. I didn't have that story. I think my story is powerful, but I've helped people with stories that bury mine in positivity and unfortunately trauma and things of that nature. So I needed it to keep me stable, because otherwise my mind would go all over. So, you know, I like that die thing that Sid says, but I guess I did that without the die. I didn't want to spend the $8.
Yeah, you needed that for your publishing.
Yes, exactly. My publishing
So,
money and marketing.
yeah, you know, when it comes to the challenges, I want everybody to dive deep into it, because I know it's nice to sit here and we can all talk about it. And to the viewer watching, they might think to themselves, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. So each of you, and I'll go, I guess I'll go last. But when it comes to writing, Sid, take this one away. What was the biggest challenge that you had to face, and how did you overcome it?
I mean, the biggest challenge for me, well, I like to complete things. So the book that I have coming out next, it started when I was 22, and I finished it 30 years later.
Wow.
So one, because it was an autobiography. So I hadn't lived as much as I thought I had lived. I hadn't lived it yet, right? And so that was the challenge, was being patient to just keep writing until it was complete. You know, where I think so many people start, they think, oh, it's writing, it's a certain amount of time, or it's supposed to be this way. No, you just have to be patient till the book will reveal itself. At least that's what I've found over writing 10 books. When it reveals itself and says, okay, now I'm done. Like, doesn't matter what I thought. So the autobiography, it just happened on December 22nd, or December 31st, 2022. I knew, okay, now I have a whole nother story to go live. So it was just complete. Now, and at the same time, I hadn't gone through being blind. So those things set in that taught me lessons, and depending on what you're writing, but it just has to take its own time. So patience. Yeah.
Misty, what do you think?
Well, I definitely had a pivotal moment, which would be a different show, but I found myself on top of a mountain living unplugged with a box of my old journals that I'd written a few pages in each one. So when I would go to use those journals to write new information in, I noticed that I was seeing a lot of repetitive journals at the beginning of each book where I'd written for a week or two, and my story sounded so familiar that in that moment, I realized I had some of my secrets to my limitations in life in my journals, because I saw my repetitive pattern, even though I was in my writing blaming it on the other people in my world. Here in looking back, I could read my notes and see I had limits that I got to spend a lot of time with, because I didn't have screens to get distracted on. So I spent a lot of time with that. And I came up, and I'll share it with you now, but it's kind of a 4-step. When I'm feeling some sort of way that I don't want to feel, I ask, what do I want to feel, see, have, do? What is it that I want? And then what would I wish would happen? So I put a little magic in it. So what do I want? What do I wish? And then I dare myself, this is the hardest step, to write the thing I wish I had and leave the owie out of it. So using my son, for example, I can't bring him back, but I wish that I have the peace. I wish that I have the friendships. So now I can begin to write that story. It doesn't mean I don't miss him or love him. I just don't have to include that in every story that I write. And so I want it, then I wish it, then I write it, and then I stay ready to receive it. And that muscle building makes peace an easy option when life gives you something big, because your brain already knows this is what we do when information is different than we perceived it. So I go back to being kind of forced into my journals on the mountaintop, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because that practice and that discipline helps me every day. And like we said earlier about writing cures everything. It doesn't make it go away. It makes it where I can lift anything, any weight that comes my way. digest it through writing to where I can integrate it, release what's not serving me, and digest what is going to be nourishing for me.
Wow. And you're just speaking to the truth of the saying that the pen is mightier than the sword, right? So one thing that I really want to touch on before we get to Marc and his biggest challenge when it came to writing and how he overcame it is the fact that when you are saying you are writing what you want to feel, so you want to feel that peace. And like you said, it's not excluding anything else. I think people will start to feel guilty if they write about what their dream life is, because a lot of people, they want to face reality, right? And what that is like, oh, well, when it comes to death, in your instance specifically, there are a multitude of emotions that go along with that. And then if they don't face those, they kind of feel guilty and they feel like they're not facing reality. But when you are able to make that shift and to make that dream desired feeling your reality, then you are imbuing what it is that you want to feel in your everyday life. So it's not that like you're cheating or that you're shortchanging yourself. You know that once you write anything it is that you want to feel, that it has to happen, because that's in accordance with the law of attraction, right? So everybody watching that, that's a huge piece that I want to emphasize on. But now, Marc, take it away, please. What was your biggest challenge, and then how did you get through it?
Sure. So first of all, I just want people to know, I don't want them to think that it has to be personal all the time. You can write poetry. It can be fiction also, any kind of writing. I had two main problems. One is, and I present at schools and camps and things like that, if I'm in front of 300 people and 285 tell me, wow, that was the best presentation I've ever seen. If one person tells me it was terrible, I don't sleep for 4 weeks. That was the old me. Okay. So how does that become my writing problem? I showed my work in the beginning too often to other people. And that is a mistake, because everybody has an opinion. I'm not saying it's bad, but everybody has an opinion. So that was the first problem. Then I started to realize that was between two people. And I'm going to say people, me and the book, because Misty and Sid will tell you when you get to a certain part in your book, it becomes a living, breathing thing. And I said to myself, but I want it to be perfect. I want it to be perfect. Done is better than perfect. And at some point I said, am I done? When am I done? It is not up to the writer when you are done. The book will tell you when it's done. So once I learned that, I got a lot faster at writing than I used to be.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that too, that it doesn't have to always be, like you said, personal experiences, but just the fact that once you are just taking that and you're moving through it, that is the biggest key in order to write, not just for, for fun, but if you want to use, it could be for fun, but it also could be for a purpose as well. And actually we are getting close to, it is almost time for this segment to be over. So I'm just going to drop a few banners in there. So if anybody wanted to reach out to you, here it is. You can reach out to Marc at marchoberman.com. And on Instagram, it is at, Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. He actually has a show on E360 as well. Go check him out. Marc, when is your show? What time does it air?
Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST.
Go check him out. He has had really great, wonderful guests on the Zombies, Tommy Chong, and so many other legendary people in the world. So go check out his work. And then we have Misty Lee right here. If you want to reach out to her at campgroundtbt.com. And if you want to reach out through Facebook, you can do it at mistyriston.com. What can we expect to see when we go to Campground TBT, Misty?
That one highlights what we do here in the healing spaces for people who want to come on site, whether it's to write through something, grieve through something, emote through something, play through something. But the campground has all the places to safely emote, and I'll make sure they're nourished body, mind, and soul. So there's lots of good stuff there. And then I'm available for light editing for things that are uplifting. If you're writing a horror story, I can definitely get you in line with someone who could do a beautiful edit for you.
There it is, everybody. Thank you so much to the both of you for being here today. We're just going to take you guys out. Everybody go check them out and all the social medias and all of their websites as well. We appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Great time. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks.
So, Sid, we are going into our next segment, but what did you think about the first one?
I thought it was great. And I look forward to going over to the campground with Misty. Because we'll be there August 1st for a 4-day silent retreat. So I'm excited to get to know her and spend more time with her in that way. And yeah, great stuff. It was awesome. I've never really taken the time to talk about writing like that, you know. So it was really just great to hear their perspective on writing into their reality, right? Like how you can, you know, Misty, she said, want, wish, write, receive. And I think when I'm thinking about that, the want, like most people know how to want something. They're wanting things that often they don't have. And then the wish is being willing to ask for it. You know, I thought that was a great way to bring it forward. And when it comes to manifesting, write something, because it, as soon as you write it, it's already been created in the 3D form in some way, right? It's on paper, it's here, it's tangible, and then you got to receive it, you know. And goes back to what I talked about with writing. Be patient, because you don't know how long it's going to take.
Wow, it's so many things to cover in such a short amount of time. But now we have to bring on our next two wonderful, amazing guests, which is Terrah Bennett Smith and Danne Smith Mathis. We're going to be talking about how to come together as one human race despite the barriers in our lives. But first, we have to hear a quick word from our sponsor, and we're just going to jump right into it. So after the commercial plays, we are going to see Danne and Terrah on the screen. So everybody, thank you so much for dropping all of these great comments in here. We have that sweet, yay, awesome segment, guys. We have Christopher Rouse coming on a little bit later as well. And just talking about all of these great comments on here that we can't get to because we have to keep it moving. So here's just a 1-minute commercial from Great Success, which is actually Marc's company. And we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
At Grade Success, it's our job to make sure that your child succeeds in school regardless of the subject or grade level. Our tutors are trained professionals who know how to promote learning and encourage results. Whether you are looking for help with SAT, ACT prep, private and group tutoring, K-3 reading programs for your child, or educational consulting and college counseling, here at Grade Success, we can help you find the right answer. Visit gradesuccess.com to learn more about our in-person and online program options. Grade Success, where your child's success is our business.
Everybody back after the word from our sponsors, which is Great Success. As you just heard, it's Marc. He runs also a company dedicated to helping the younger generation when it comes to study skills and everything school related as well. So I'm really excited about this segment because this is going to be challenging what we know as humans, right? Where we see all the things that can possibly divide us, whether it's our titles, whether it's, you know, what we say to ourselves. If you're a janitor, if you're a CEO, if you're in this community, if you're that community, all that stuff doesn't matter. And we have two experts here that is going to really bust open the conversation that we need to talk about unity and inclusivity. Sid, take it away, man.
Well, you know, I love the conversation around human. That's why I wrote the autobiography of a human. And what I love about it for me is that I'm Native American blood, Indonesian, Egyptian, Scottish, French, and there's so many other things. I know that hating anyone is hating some part of me because I am human. You know, at the end of the day, all those things, I am human. So I love getting in conversations, and Danne and I talk a lot about how to bring love forward for everyone. And so that's how this shows up for me. So I'd love to hear where from either one of you, maybe Danne, you start, you got the first initial of the alphabet. What is it that you notice around with people where they're struggling, people in the world, people in your life that you see at work or wherever, where are they struggling that we can alleviate that for all humans?
Thank you so much for having me, having us. You guys are great with this. It's awesome. Yeah, I agree with Dano. This is a very delicate subject. If I answered that question for myself, I would have to go back to a conversation I had with my probably a person that I would say is my person, one of my people. And she is a Roman Catholic, Irish Roman Catholic, who is now Jewish. And we went to high school together, and she taught me how to play basketball. And we never knew one of us was a darker shade than the other or a different race than the other. That didn't matter. And I think to answer the question pointedly, Sid, is its identity. People have lost their own identity, if in fact they ever had it in the first place. And I say that, and I'll give an example, and then I'll go ahead and pass the stick to Terrah. She mentioned something in the conversation because, as many of you know, and for those of you that don't, I am an advocate for the advancement of respect for Black women in the workplace across all industries. And we were having a conversation, and she says, you know, I don't identify as white. Now, she's Irish. I don't know what, or Jewish. I don't know what else to call you. I can call you Irish. I can call you Jewish. I don't know, but now she's Jewish, so I guess I could call you Jewish. And I said, why not? And she said, because that's not a culture to me. That's something that was made up. That was something that was identified for me, but that's not my identity. So I think the answer is that people have defined other people, and it really has just gotten out of control and at so many levels. So I'll open it up with that.
Beautiful. And I love the fact that you said that too, because that is so true, right? Where is it in the Bible? I know that this is, I really encourage everybody's all faith and things like that, but you know, I'm going to refer to the Bible. Where is it that they said that they made the Jewish person, or they made the Hispanic man? None of this stuff is really existed, right? This is a new age way of thinking from, you know, things that have been tied to war and domination and land and things like that. We're all one person. So Danny, exactly what you just said. I love that you said that, because we have a lot more in common, number one, than we may think. And then number two is this is all man-made, you know, constructs in order to keep us divided. So I really love the fact that you brought that up. Terrah, what is it that that you've deemed that you see people are struggling with when it comes to breaking down the barriers and including everybody?
Well, thank you guys for having me, and here with Danny and Sid. But anyway, you know, for me, it's really a broader, well, not even broader, it's really a more personal, like you were saying, Sid, self. It's like everything reverts back to self. Every relationship, you know, we have relationships with our moms, our teachers, like you were saying, Sid, that we have a relationship with everyone. But for me in my life, what I've come to understand and to see the correlation between how each of those relationships show up for me to teach me about me. And what I learned from every relationship, I learned more about myself. It has less to do with the other person. And if we spent more time really taking each relationship as a reflection of us, to see the things that we like to fix, the things that we like to hone in on, the things that we'd like to be better at about ourselves, there would be no need for separation. There would be no need for pointing the finger, because we'd be spending more time perfecting and trying to get into ourselves that we're not even looking outward to see what you're doing or what you're not doing. And I think that, you know, when we, you know, that saying when people say, well, you can't love anyone till you love yourself, you know, you got to love yourself first. And yeah, there's some truth to that, I'd say, but I don't even know if people really understand what that means when you love yourself, you know, like falling in love with yourself is where I'm at in my life. I want to fall in love with me so that when I do meet someone else, or someone else doesn't align with how my consciousness or my belief system, they take nothing from me because they gave nothing to me, because I already had it, because I gave it to myself. So when I meet that mate, if he falls short, doesn't take anything from me, because I loved you for what you were able to bring, but I'm not in love with you because you're so fabulous, because I was in love with me. So I think that to put a bow around it is that when we spend more time doing our own inner work and our own growth work and our own looking at ourselves and taking these people who come into our lives as an opportunity to do that and stop looking and pointing the finger and they and this group and that group and that group and this group and really go, okay, so you're here. You're here in my face to show me this. So what is this that I need to learn? And then I can look at you and go, okay, I see where you are. This is the best you can do. And if more of us did that, then we would be aligned as one because we come from a healthier space within ourselves. So that's how I see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta jump in.
Yeah.
I gotta jump into this first, the identity thing. And those that know me, I speak from I because I am the experience. It's not about my ego. I see here first and foremost. So I see, which is something deeper connected to each and every one. Like I am, two most important words we can use in the English language. They didn't say me am or you am. They said I am. And so I is number one. Now, when I go to identity, the thing that for me, I think I almost don't even have the words for it because identity to me creates separation, and that's impossible. There is no separation. Now, yes, there is something that I can learn about myself. I'm fortunate that fall in love with you, with myself, that was created by my mom. I had mirrors all over my crib. So whenever I laid, no matter where I looked, as a baby, I looked at myself and I learned how to love me all the time. Like my parents said they had to fight me to get me out of bed because I wanted to play with the other baby, which was myself. So every time I would see myself and I look at, and that was the reflection. I love, and I try to stay out of mirrors because I can get frozen there for a little while.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of fall in love, like love isn't fall. No one says fall up to love. So don't go to your head for love. You've got to go in love. It's fall into yourself and become in that place of opening up from the inside out. So that, love is down in. It's if you take out your heart, eventually the brain goes dead. Yet your heart, if your heart's pumping, it could go pump something else too, because that's where the love is. So I think it's important that we learn how to go in there as opposed to going up here to try to fix the problems in our lives.
Well, I think that's a great place to take this conversation, because I know, yeah, I want to add my 2 cents in too before we move into how to fall in love with ourselves. But when you understand that everything that people say and do is a reflection of themselves, then when these people that are coming to you that are trying to knock you down or they want to put you in this box, you know that you're not going to fit in that box. So you don't entertain that, right? And I think that comes with emotional intelligence. And another thing too is that when people try to put you in that box, it's because your light and your love for yourself is shining so bright that they can't take it, right? I mean, think about a vampire. When you shine your light at them or they go into the sunlight, they melt and they dissipate and they just can't take it. So when it comes to developing that self-love, that is a huge step in order to break that barrier. And even that barrier may be within ourselves. But like you said, Sid, when we go inside and we do that introspection, then we can find the components of ourselves that we do love, whether it's, wow, I can provide for my family. I know how to teach my son or my daughter what unconditional love is. Even though I may have not experienced that, I'm going to break that cycle of change. So when it comes to discovering that self-love, I want Danny to take this one first, to talk about strategies and what it took for you to love yourself, because I know you're going to tell us a little bit about your situation, how 26 years you were struggling and fighting with that self-love. So tell us what it was that you were struggling with for the 26 years and what practices you did in order to develop that self-love.
Oh, wow, Dano. Okay. Yeah. So for Dano's referring to, I was in an abusive marriage for 26 years. And I think what got me into self-love was understanding. I think it goes back to what Terrah was saying when you talk about people that come into your lives. What are you supposed to be learning? Like, what is it? It's gonna expose you. And so I did not understand for a long time that the reason that my cycle continued in that situation was because I idolized the institution of marriage. So rather than caring about myself, I idolized the institution of marriage so much that I was willing to sacrifice myself. And in that process of sacrificing, I was gaining nothing. And it wasn't until, of course, we all have turning points and breaking points, that I realized that I don't have to do this. And that I was worth so much. Like, there was no comparison of my worth compared to what I was allowing myself to experience and struggle with versus what I was created to be. They were light years apart. There's no comparison. And so for me, it was learning that the very thing, and you brought up the Bible, and so I'll unapologetically follow in your lead here. When God said there are two greatest things for you to do, it's to have love no one more than me. So that put that idol, whatever that is, people, money, things, places, success, children, spouses, situations, whatever. Don't be more into all of that than you are into me, first thing. And the next thing is love your neighbor as yourself. So if I don't love myself, I cannot love other people. It's not possible. If God said you have to love yourself so you can love other people, that's a cause and effect situation. Mm-hmm. And so I learned how to do that, just by the spirit and the teaching of God over time, that I paid way more attention to than I had during those 26 years. You mentioned about the head and the heart. Average length is 13 inches between our head and our heart, depending on the size of our length of our bodies. But I'm short, so I'll go with 13 inches. Mm-hmm. And I was missing those lessons by 13 inches for a long time.
Wow. Beautiful. Jeez, I feel like I'm going to church right now. And we got Sebastian here saying preach too. So that's how you know we're on the right path, though, because we're all coming together as one in order to learn what it is that we need to learn. And Jeanette says, Danny, you're a beautiful woman outside and inside. So glad you're in a better place. You deserve all the best. There's only one Danny, just like there is only one Terrah, just like there is only one Sid. So Terrah, I want you to take that away as well. What strategies and techniques did you have to learn and apply to yourself in order to discover that self-love within yourself?
Well, for me, to be honest, it's ongoing, because as I learned the self-love in one area, something else presents itself that I didn't realize that I needed a little work done in that area. And what I'm finding is that life is going to be a continual process. There's never an end place, because as soon as you get there, there's something else that you're working on about yourself. But with that said, like you, Danny, I was also in an abusive situation. Mine started when I was 4. So for me as a child, witnessing the abuse and trying to fight and help my mother at 4 became my addiction to that behavior, which I had no idea of the correlation between what was happening and that this would be something that would be part of my life down the line, because it was just what I was going through. I had no idea that I formed a relationship with abuse, and I formed a relationship with being abused, and I formed a relationship with being in a relationship where someone abuses me. So I ended up having that in my life. And it wasn't until I had to I was doing self-work. I didn't know what I was doing because I didn't know how I got there. So I'm this strong chick from the Bronx. I'm like, nobody mess with me. I'm from the Bronx, blah, blah, blah. But here I am in this abusive relationship. not knowing how did I remember I used to sit there and write letters like to like color Celie from The Color Purple. God, how did I get here? God, how did I get here? And then, but I started to, one of the things that I did, unbeknownst to me, it was almost like I removed myself from my life and started watching it as a play. Mm-hmm. And as I started watching the production that I created and seeing that this is very close to what my mother went through. This is very close to how I used to daydream. So the only common denominator in this situation of all these people are me. This guy was not there before, but he's here now and he's in my life. So I had to, what I do in my program, I do something called redesigning your blueprint. And then you rewrite the script of your life that you want. Because without redesigning that blueprint, people give us a blueprint when we're young. My mother and father, unfortunately, they knew no better. So whatever they went through became my blueprint that I took on. And I carried that into adulthood. But I started to do work on myself because I didn't want to continue that blueprint. So I went through an abusive relationship. And as I watched from the outside and I started rewriting, okay, you need to get out of my script. I don't like you anymore. But someone else would return. A new guy, different face, different name, may not have been as abusive, but he was still abusive. Okay, we're back here still. And still at this point, Terrah, you're the only common denominator here. These guys don't know each other, but they keep showing up. So if they keep showing up and you're still here, you need to do the work. Write him out of the script. Okay, what I need to do next. So I started rewriting my script. And then I started to live out that script that I was writing and inviting people into my life. And I had to pay attention. I had to get ahead of the people as they come in. I have to look at them and, really kind of size them up because I know where my addiction was in the abuse, that if I didn't stay ahead of it, I'd be in it. So I had to get ahead of it so I can watch, see who's coming in and go, no, I don't want you here. You talk too loud to me already this first date. That means second and third date, you're going to talk loud. Fourth date, you got to go. So that's kind of how I began my own process.
Yeah, beautiful. I don't know what the echo is right there, but there are so many topics that I just wanted to dive into. Like you said, having that accountability to say, I'm the common denominator. What do I do now? Or even like you just mentioned before, what is it that I need to learn from every one of these situations to have that awareness to say, oh, well, what are they trying to teach me? There's so many different ways that we can dive into this, but we have to go on to the next segment, unfortunately, but fortunately at the same time, because the next one, if you are enjoying this, you're going to enjoy everything from here on out as well. So let me give everybody their credit here. Absolutely fantastic. Everybody's just been crushing it, but I do want to share your social medias as well. So we have, if you are interested on Instagram, you can find Terrah at Terrah Bennett Smith, at Terrah Bennett Smith. And then on her IMDb as well, you can find her at Terrah Bennett Smith. And then on Instagram, you can find Danny Smith Mathis at Danny Smith Mathis, and also DannySmithMathis.com as well. So I'm so sorry that we have to cut this short. I really don't want to, but we have to get on to our next
Thank you guys for having us, and now
Thank you.
Awesome. I'll talk to you guys soon. Well, and thank you so much for being on here. Sid, man, debrief analysis. What do you think?
Well, I do want to circle back because I think as much as people lean into the Bible, it was written 500 years after Christ. So a lot of things like telephone, you pass through kids, it's going to change at some point. And then there's also an update because we have become wiser than King James and his buddies when they were writing something that they heard from someone else. And love your neighbor as yourself. When I think about that, it hits me like, well, what if you don't know love and you've been abused? That's the love you know. So then they're going out and they are loving someone as themselves because that's what they've learned. And so I think it's important to recognize that, just because you read it doesn't mean you got to live it. Like some things you got to actually put into practice and for me, seek the truth, and the truth will set you free. That's also from the same book. Yet the more I seek the truth, the more I, like Terrah was talking about as the common denominator, the more I dive into, I am the one that's in my life all the time. So if something isn't the way I want it in my life, then I have to shift it. That's something I had to learn. Like I used to say, oh, I want love. And my teacher I finally ran into the right person and said, no, you don't. And I was like, I think I do want love. She was like, you're stupid. And so eventually it was like, okay, wait a minute. I get it. I don't want love because I'm miserable too many times. So I actually must want misery because I keep going back to misery. And so getting real with myself, I think, is so important in the name of that conversation we just had. Like, get real with yourself, know what you want, and now are you really committed to it? I want peace. I don't care where I go. You're going to hear me talk about peace. I wear peace on my hat. You know, peace is, I'm a disciple of peace. So when you come with some BS, I'm going to be going for peace. That's just it. And you got to be honest with yourself. So if you don't have peace, you don't really want it, or you'd make the commitment no matter what. That's what I got from that.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And like I said, we can have we extended it to 2 hours, but then we can extend it to 4 hours, and it can just keep going and going with all of this great content.
On another night.
Yeah, on another night, part 2 for all of this Beyond Barriers 2-hour special that we're having. And Sid, I just wanted one point very quickly because we have to go on to the next one, is that when you hear the truth, you know it's the truth. Like, there's no discrepancy about where it came from. You know, we've been talking about the sources, whether some people believe in the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, whatever. It can be somebody else that we've talked to. We can pick up a piece of paper on the ground. It could be a gum wrapper. It doesn't matter where it comes from. But when you know, you have that feeling deep within inside yourself. So now we have to do our best to act on it, honor it, and implement it in every source in every area of our life as well. So here's a word from our second sponsor. It Takes a Village Housing. And after this, we're going to automatically put on the screen the next segment, which is a really great one as well. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the importance of relationships and success with Liz McNary and Walt McKinley, just two awesome, incredible people. So here it is, everybody. It Takes a Village Housing. And to the Positivity Posse, please keep lighting me up with your comments, questions, good energy, because we feel it here on Weekly Dose of Dano TV. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. And here's our word from our sponsor.
Takes a Village is about keeping our families together.
God bless this organization.
On my face, because It Takes a Village Housing is doing such amazing work here in the South Jersey area, and we are continuing this amazing, wonderful content with this amazing, beautiful souls that have all come together to help each other and to really raise the vibes of the earth. And I know y'all are feeling it through your phone screens right now, because I'm feeling it as well. And I'm here by myself, right, physically, but we're all connected together. So now we're going to be talking about the power and the importance of relationships and success. So we have Walt McKinley here, absolute legend. He has so many years of experience in the marriage sense and just developing overall, success in relationships as well. And we have Liz McNary, is, if you can read on the screen, is the wonderful, wonderful wife of Sid McNary, but she's way more than that, because she has had a lifetime of experiences, challenges, and successes as well in the world of relationships. So everybody, thank you for being on here today. And what do you think about the episode so far? How are we doing?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dano and Sid. You guys are off to an amazing start. I was really lit up by the last segment, especially. I mean, I was like, we can just keep that ball rolling with this relationship conversation. And so much of that is relevant, which actually brought a lot of joy to my heart, because when it's talking about unity in racial relations, that really is comparable to what we're going to be talking about, in my opinion, here in this next segment. So just really excited to be here and off to a great start.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Walt, what about you, man?
Man, I'm pumped to be here, brother. I appreciate you, Dano. Sid, nice to see you. Liz, nice to see you too. I can't wait to get into this topic, because we all know relationships are vital to mental health, and your mental health is your wealth at the end of the day. And so I love how we just talked about just loving yourself and loving other people in the last segment. I think it couldn't be any more on point, and a great segue. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but a great segue into this one right here.
Yeah.
Well, everything is intentional and just in the flow and in the moment. So I don't know if I did it consciously, but hey, it's just working out that way as well. And I want to piggyback off of what we just talked about in the last segment, right? And it was about the relationships with ourselves and success. But in order to have an open and honest relationship, whether it's with ourselves and other people, we don't really know what that looks like if we haven't been trained or learned how to do that. So Walt, you can just take this one away for the first. What does an open and honest and real communication with yourself or other people, what does that look like?
Man, let me tell you, I've been married 25 years in July. So to me, the number one relationship outside of yourself that you're going to have in your life is really with your spouse and your partner. There's nothing that's going to teach you more about yourself. There's nothing that's going to challenge you more. You have to have real empathy, real resilience. You have to be willing to communicate. You have to be willing to compromise. And most important, you really have to be willing to build trust at a high level. And part of that trust is truly the commitment to say, for better or for worse, because there will be worse times in that relationship specifically. There will be challenges, there will be resentment. But man, let me tell you, when you can get over the hump and you can get over that mountain that every relationship will be challenged with at some point or another, and you can have a positive marriage, the effect that has on the rest of your life will catapult your success more than anything else would. And contrary to that too, is if your relationship is struggling with your significant other, that does affect the way you show up with business partners. It affects the way you show up at work. It affects the way you show up as a friend. And most importantly, it affects the way that you show up with yourself. So to me, building that trust, building that honesty, real open communication, especially when it comes to the hard thing, is truly where the juice is at in life, man. The better you can get at that, the more committed you can get to that, the happier and healthier you're going to be, and it'll affect everything else that you do.
Beautiful. Liz, like the same thing, when it comes to opening or being honest and having that open communication, what does that look like?
Yeah. So first, congrats, Walt. 25 years is amazing and so exciting.
Yes.
For me, so Sid has taught this concept of getting clear in the workshops that he's put forth. And that's something that we continue to do with workshops and events that we lead. And I think that's a really vital piece of information to bring forward in this conversation. So getting clear is really just about sharing something that's on your heart or on your mind. And when it comes to relationships, especially for me, my relationship with Sid, if there's something that I'm thinking about or I'm feeling, he knows that. Like he's going to, especially me, like everyone wants to play poker with me because they would win. Like it's all right here on my face, my facial expression. So I think that's been a really helpful kind of way to move forward in relationship, is getting clear. And so if there's something that I'm thinking about or that I'm feeling, it's going to come out one way or the other. So if I can intentionally let it out in a productive way of my choice and my time and all of those details, then like Walt was saying, it's not going to come out in another aspect of my life. It's not going to just blow up when I'm at work because I really want to tell something to Sid. So just getting clear, and maybe that takes more time. I might need to reflect on it or use Misty Lee's journaling techniques, or maybe I just am ready to go for it. But I think that is one thing that I've personally found to be really helpful.
Yeah. I'm going to just jump in for a moment. And I do want to go back to this idea of if we didn't have the example. You know, I know that my dad treated me differently than his dad, of how he was treated. And I've done the same with my children. And we have a lot of things that we create these beliefs around, and they're not true. If someone treats me poorly, I just learned what I don't like so I can do differently. So it doesn't always have to look like, oh, this is what it was like. Oh, Sid, you had a rosy life, which I didn't. But let's say some people think I did just because I'm where I am now. So then they're like, oh, your life must have been easy. I don't think so. That's your belief system. Yet, because of the things that I didn't like, I changed them. It's just that simple. Like, I'm not going to continue to treat my kids the ways that I was treated that didn't feel right. And it's not even emotional intelligence. It's just called making a different choice. You don't even have to be that smart. It's like, okay, if everybody touches a hot stove and you touch the hot stove and know it's hot, you gonna keep touching it? No. So I think for me, I look at that and I'd love for us to begin to shift some of these things that we believe to be true and just question whether or not it's true. Because just because there's plenty of people that have come from miserable situations as children to go on and create beautiful families and love and all those things. So it's all, if we allow it, it's all good, and it's all pointing us to a better way if we allow it to teach us. I just want to pour that in.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great too that we make that conscious choice to change. And Sid, what it sounds like you're doing is you're taking what can be perceived as a negative and you are assigning a positive value to it, because it's not really a bad thing or a negative thing if it's serving you towards your highest good and it led you to where you are today, you know, with all of your successes in your marriage and, you know, everything else outside of marriage. So I love that concept, but let's dive deep into it with two experts here that has plenty of experience when it comes to changing that one thing. So for Walt and Liz, let's start out with Liz. What was that one thing that you had to unlearn that you learned about from relationships, whether, you know, it was the way that your parents, you know, had the relationship that you had to unlearn from them? What was the biggest thing that you had to unlearn and then change for your relationships going forward?
Yeah, I would say for me, it goes down to an aspect of communication and talking about the belief system and growing up. I didn't necessarily have this in my childhood. My parents were really supportive, and I tested and challenged them enough that they could have been a different way, but they were always there for me. But somehow in my relationships, I learned that, or I picked up that it was bad to tell people something they didn't want to hear. So, I mean, a really simple example is like being on time, which if you watch any podcast that comes up for us sometimes, still a work in progress for me. But like the simple example of coming home from work and I'm like, hey, I'm on my way. I'll be there in 5 minutes. But in reality, I'm still in my office doing a few things, talking to a few people. And an hour later, Sid's like, hey, like dinner's ready. What are you doing? Where are you? And so that might seem like a simple example, but it shows up in other ways too that can be more impactful. And even in that example, that becomes impactful because here's Sid who's taking the time to create this nice dinner for us, and I'm not there. And so he can smile and be really forgiving, which I love and appreciate. But at the end of the day, I don't want to keep doing that to him. So for me, that is something that I've really been working on. I feel like this should be done, chapter written, book closed, but that's me. I'm still working on being able to communicate honestly and just say, hey, Sid, I'm working on packing up You know, it's like, why do I lie and say, hey, I'm on the way when I'm really not? So that aspect of communication shows up for me. So here I am bearing my soul. And I know Sid's got my back. So that's what's coming up for me, Dano.
Beautiful. Well, we appreciate that honesty, because I know I'm like that too. Not necessarily in the marriage sense, but you know, just that relationship with myself. If I say I'm going to do something, then I need to hold myself accountable. And now, Walt, take it away, man. What was the biggest thing that you had to unlearn when it came to relationships, and you know, replace that with a positive meaning?
Yeah, I think, Sid, I love what you talked about at the beginning there about just unlearning behaviors, and you could use it as an excuse or you can use it as a boost for where you're going. And I've chosen in my life to accept my past and know I am who I am because of what happened to me, not in spite of what happened to me, meaning the empathy, the grit, the resilience, the way I love, my compassion is all because of the negative life experiences, being locked in basements and chained to beds. And I wrote a book called Monsters in My House, a true story, my memoir. You don't get that by having an easy life. But I don't regret 1 second of it because it's helped me change the legacy of my family in a way that I wouldn't. But part of that was really just taking away expectations. I think I had such lofty expectations of my spouse, of my kids, of the people that I worked with, family, friends. It didn't matter. We as human beings carry so many expectations around with us, and expectations are truly the silent killers of all relationships. When you have these expectations, resentment will build because people will never meet your expectations. It just can't happen. Typically, we don't even meet the ones that we set for ourselves, which can lead to some negative self-talk too. So when I realized to just love people where they're at, give them some grace like I want people to give me, and give them an opportunity to grow into who they're meant to be, just like I'm trying to do for myself. I started stripping away expectations. It doesn't mean that I don't have requirements for how I'll be treated. Doesn't mean I don't set some boundaries, but it just means taking away the expectations and loving them where they're at, like I've chosen to do with my mother, in the way that she's been able to show up for me based upon her own life experiences and her own trauma she hasn't worked through and all the other things that go along with that. So I think the quicker we can remove those expectations, the more fruitful our relationships become, because then now we're in gratitude for how they do show up instead of resentment for the expectation that they didn't meet.
Sid, what's on your mind, man? I see you laughing.
Man.
I see that cap going. What are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking, I just saw as Walt was talking, and I just have to point out, because you know I keep seeing warrior, and that's my spirit. So I appreciate you wearing that around, #warrior. And Janet said nobody is perfect, and I go back to this space. Like, this is one, like, I don't have necessarily a pet peeve, but this would be it. This idea that we aren't perfect, because everything is perfectly designed by the perfect being that designed it, the perfect thing, whatever you want to call it, in perfection of where it's going. So like Walt said, all the things that happened in my past were perfect because they got me here. If you're not here, then we can talk about perfect is ended. But if you're still here and you're on this side of the dirt and you get to work at something, I don't care what happened before, it was perfectly designed to get you here. The perfect amount of pressure put on a piece of coal becomes a diamond. The perfect amount of pressure put on a caterpillar that turns the liquid eventually becomes a butterfly. And if you break it out of its cocoon without the perfect amount of pressure, it will never fly. Everything about a human and a human's life is perfectly designed for us all to evolve to our highest. That's the human experience. It's perfect. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's, you know, I'm going to call it like it is. It's a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, no worries. And I think she has a rebuttal here. She says, true, but we're made to make mistakes to get us to perfection. It's so true too. It depends. I'm just going to step in to say it depends on what it is that you define it as, right? Because if we are intended to make those mistakes and we see it as the road that we need to get on that path of perfection or enlightenment, then you could say that as well. Or you could think the total opposite and say, nothing in my life is going right. Why is this stuff happening to me? And a big thing that people say all the time is, this isn't supposed to happen to me. It's supposed to happen to someone else. So I think that idea of perspective And the fact that we are able to come together to talk about the different perspectives and to enlighten each other is why we are having this conversation here today. And there's so many different things that we have to talk about. And I don't want to, cut anybody's time short, but we are, kind of short on time, and we have to get on to the next segment as well.
Wow, that flew.
So, yeah, I know. Seriously. I think it's, I mean, everything is here is timed accordingly, and we're actually over time. But, here it is for everybody. If you are interested to talk more about relationships with everybody, or relationships specifically with Liz and for Walt, we have it right here for you. We have right here the artofpeacefulliving.com, which if you want to go talk to Liz and find out more about her, you can discover it that way. And her Instagram is @Liz_McNary. And then we have Walt as well, waltmckinley.com, to find out more about him, his amazing podcast, which I believe is in the top 5%. Is that true, Walt?
Yeah, Legacy Driven Marriages. It's a podcast my wife and I partner on together to really just talk about the ups, downs, and the fun that we all have when we're married long enough.
Yep, there it is. And then if you want to connect with him on Instagram as well, because he puts out a lot of great content, you can find it at Walt McKinley Inspiration. The name is definitely fitting for that as well. So everybody, thank you for coming on to talk about relationship success, because I think this was a big piece that we need to understand, that relationships aren't always in the outer world. It's definitely how we treat ourselves as well. So thank you both for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Brother, appreciate you guys.
Beautiful.
Nice to meet you, Walt.
There it is. Thank you, guys. See you. All right. So, Sid, man, we are coming actually close to the end of the episode. I mean, the total time has been an hour and a half that's passed, but it feels like literally maybe 20 minutes at the most, because we're just in the flow right now, and everybody's just providing such great ideas, points, perspectives, and everything that we need to engage and drive further with this conversation of enlightenment, and for you specifically, peace. So what are your thoughts so far about everything?
Well, I think that was great. It's been a great show, and I know we're crunched on time, so we'll just go ahead and get into it. If you got however we need to roll, let's roll with it.
Let's roll with it. Let's keep the conversation going. So there's one more word from our sponsors that we need to hear about, which is the power of choices. If you know anything about me and what I do, I've partnered with my co-founder, Marc that was on the show earlier, to go into schools, camps, organizations, to teach everybody about mental resilience, anti-bullying, just overall substance prevention, all of these things that we need in order to be the best version of ourselves. But here is the official commercial for you guys. And then after that, we have our last and final segment, which is how to identify excuses and move through them with the legendary Christopher Rausch, the No Excuses coach, and Jill Jenkins, who is absolutely amazing. And I'm just excited for everybody to really dive deep and to continue the conversation. So here it is, everybody, a word from the power of choices.
What we do is very interactive, but very, very powerful, because look, yeah, I was an educator for 30 years. I don't believe in just academic education. The lack of character education, which is what we do, changes a culture, and it doesn't take 3 months or 3 years to do it.
We are the guys that come in that will teach these kids everything that they need in order to really be the best version of themselves and to get the skills to succeed in life, no matter what life throws at them. That was the power of choices. As you saw, my big, beautiful face. If you haven't gotten enough of it in the last hour and a half, boom, there's another minute for you as well. And we have Christopher Rausch here, the No Excuses coach, and Jill Jenkins.
Let me turn my hat backwards. Chris,
there you go. Let's go, rock stars. Let's ready to rock. What's up, Jill? It's good to meet you.
Do it.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, you guys have done a fantastic job. You guys have kept my attention the entire 2 hours, and I just want to applaud all the previous speakers. I've taken notes, and I think everybody's done a phenomenal job. So everybody out there watching and listening, make sure you guys take action on this stuff. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Liz, what do you think about everything? Liz, excuse me, I'm still back in the last segment. Jill, what do you have to say about everything?
Yes. You know, I'm just blown away as well by some of the conversations that have been going on. You know, just magnificent from, you know, Miss I think I don't know if I'm saying her name right, Misty Lee and Marc.
Misty, yeah.
About writing, you know, your personal stories, and Danne and Terrah and Liz and Walt. Amazing. Absolutely. And so many gems that were dropped. I mean, I've been taking notes as well.
Beautiful. Well, now it's your guys' time to shine, because I know you two are both just chock full of amazing golden nuggets and gems as well that we need to hear as far as moving through excuses and how to not let that hinder us in our life. So let's just go right into it. We're going to dive really into the meat and potatoes of everything. So when it comes to excuses, I know I can think of 1 million different things that I can think about, which I have labeled as an excuse in my life that I actually believed in. And I think when it comes to moving through that kind of that bullshit, I know Marc, Chris, you like to use that
somebody
word.
swore. Somebody finally swore.
Yeah. So when it comes to moving through that bullshit, what's the difference between a legitimate reason and an excuse? Can you give us the blueprint on that, Chris, to start us out?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question, Dano. You guys have been asking phenomenal questions, by the way. You know, excuse is something that is self-sabotaging. It's really, like you said, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's lies that we feed ourselves in order to procrastinate, which is actually what my show is about tonight, is procrastination. We give ourselves the excuse. I don't have the time. I don't know how to do it. I don't have the money. Basically, what we're saying is we don't have the resources. But in today's age, I mean, we have the resources. It's just a matter of really having a big enough why to have that leverage to move whatever it is that's in front of us that is keeping us from actually being our greater self. What do you think, Jill?
Well, you know, when I was asked to talk about excuses, the first thing I thought was, well, what is an excuse? If you were to go to the dictionary, the first thing it would say is an excuse is an apology. So when you think about that, you're really apologizing for yourself is what excuses are. And I agree with you. There are a bunch of little lies that we tell to deflect the attention away from ourselves when we really kind of know better. So the problem with that, though, is that they're little lies that cut away at your soul.
True.
So the more you make excuses, the more you're diminishing yourself, and you know, keeping yourself away from your true purpose in life, which is to shine and share your gifts.
Amen.
So I hope we got the same guy with Sid. I don't know if his alter ego is going to come out because he put the hat backwards, but we're about to see.
He's kick-ass Sid now.
I mean, you know, we in football, we used to have, when I was at Northern Illinois, our offense was terrible when we first started. And we had a saying that we hung over top of the offensive door: be physical, no excuses. We didn't care if you jumped off sides. We didn't care if you ran the wrong play. Be physical, no excuses. And we became a physical team, and we eventually won because there were just no excuses. Like, go execute. And so for me, how that's evolved, because, you know, I'm not just running around smacking people in the face. How that's evolved, I can't be the peace guy smacking everybody all the time. But how that's evolved is, don't bring me the problems, bring me the solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you found a problem, bring me the solution. Now, if you don't have a solution, then maybe you need to sit with it. Maybe you're the problem. Like, right? Like, bring me the solution. So I really operate in that space as opposed to the excuses. Take the time to find the solution and let's move forward.
It's so true, Sid. And so many times everybody's looking for that perfectionism. I think we talked about it a little bit before, that perfectionism. I tell people to take imperfect action every single day. It's not about moving a giant boulder all at once. It's about chipping away at it at 1% every single day and finding your way to fail your way to success. When my coach asked me, she said, you know, what's the reason why you're still here after being homeless as a 7th grader, you know, doing all these different things in your life? Why are you still here? And I said, I never gave myself excuses and I never stopped. I just kept going. I figured it the fuck out every single step of the way. I figured it out and I kept going and I kept going. And guess what? My confidence kept building. My relationships kept growing. I kept becoming a stronger person. And what I was afraid of before was judgment. But as I took that imperfect action, as I built my confidence, I realized that the judgment of other people was not important. It was the satisfaction of myself, the pride in myself of going from being that 7th grade dropout to getting my master's degree and realizing everything is accomplishable if we just take that imperfect action. But if we sit there and wait and worry and play the someday game, someday when it's this and someday when it's that, then I'll go do that, we're going to wind up dying with regrets. And I think that's one of the most jeopardizing things to do is to be in this world and live this life and to wind up on your deathbed and look back and think, oh, I should have done this and I could have done this. And so oftentimes when we finally do something, we say, what? I wish I would have done it sooner. So ditch your excuses in favor of results and get out there and find that leverage. And when you have that big enough why, you take action and you succeed.
You know, I kind of want to jump in here really quick. And Chris, I want to challenge you about something you just said. One
Absolutely.
thing, I totally agree with you. If we're just constantly beating on that drum of scarcity and then we're just pushing it one day, I mean, just take these two hands, for example, right? This is that one day and this is where we are now. If we just keep saying one day, we'll never catch up to that one day, right? Because we're constantly beating that drum of scarcity and lack or whatever it is that you are beating, then that's what you're just constantly going to get. But the thing I want to challenge you about and hear your deeper answer to this question is this. You said fail your way to success.
Yes.
But if everything that we define in our lives is working out for us in our greatest and highest good, if we choose it to define it that way, then is it really a failure?
No, absolutely not. It's actually what I call it stepping stones. So many people are afraid to fail. So I sit there and tell them, like, if you're going to fail, what are you going to do? You're going to actually learn, right? You know, how does Thomas Edison create the light bulb? 10,000 ways he didn't do it. So as you continue to quote unquote fail, what you're doing is you're gaining knowledge and you're gaining power and you're gaining strength to realize, okay, that wasn't so bad. What's another way I could do it? I think somebody just said, Janet, what's up? She said, problem, solution, question, answer, right? Ask yourself. And I love what you said earlier, Sid, when you have a situation, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. So when we shift our perspectives, you guys talked about expectations, perspectives go line in, line out. It's like when we shift our perspective to say, wow, I've got another problem, then that sounds defeating. It sounds like a challenge. But when we sit there and say, I've got an opportunity, then we shift our perspective to sit there and become solution oriented. And I think that's what so many people focus on is like, oh, this is going to be so hard and it's going to be so tough and everything else. And I tell people all the time, yeah, it's going to be tough and it's going to be challenging. But when have you grown the most? When things were easier, when things were challenging, right? If you guys have never heard of it, go watch The Hero's Journey, the Joseph Campbell story on YouTube. It's a phenomenal example of what it is that we go through and how we can grow through our experiences and those challenges and reshape our perspectives to be excited about them. What do you think, Jill?
Wow, I think that's great. And I know that for myself, excuses come from me when I spread myself too thin. And I think that I'm not capable. So, you know, when you really think about it, excuses bring you back to like the lowest vibration level, really, shame. It's basically shame and fear of what happens if you're really exposed, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it gives us an opportunity to do a lot of self-work. And I know there's a lot of people who struggle with that. And so I was thinking, okay, well, if you're really in a loop or in a habit of giving a lot of excuses, then it's time to really sit down and get focused. Get focused on yourself. And I think the most important thing is to remember who you are. You know, every single person on the planet has pain. When I really embrace that thought, it doesn't matter how people come into the world. Some come into the world and they look like they have rosy lives. You know, some are rich, some are poor, some, you know, people have all kinds of challenges, but every single person is going to experience pain and they're going to experience uncertainty. So that's just part of your human experience. When you really grasp that, then you can start to see yourself in others. And that in turn allows you to forgive yourself. So when you get to that point, and really get real with yourself and see who you are, remember who you belong to. You are a gift from God, and you're put here to do his work. Really, I don't mean to get too religious or anything, but definitely to love each other. We all need each other. So the excuses have to be dealt with in order for us to live into our greater purpose. And I think that that's really the key to getting to happiness.
Beautifully said. And there was one thing that you just said that I want to touch on, because I know Sid is writing down his notes because he has some things brewing in that backwards cap of his. But it always comes up for some reason. Well, I know what the reason is, but you just talked about the vibrational element, and which was shame. So I'm going to show this picture. It's going to cover all of our beautiful faces, but we'll be right back. I mean, you can still hear us. But right here is the vibrational chart. And I always show this every episode, it seems like, because it always comes up. So like you were saying at the bottom, if you're just vibrating at that shame, that guilt, and that grief, well, that's what you're going to experience more of in your lifetime. And obviously, if you're at a low vibrational spot, that means that negative things are going to happen to you. But when you honor your word and you don't make those excuses and you say what you're going to do, well, then you're proud of yourself, you love yourself, and you're at joy and peace with yourself. And that's at the higher end, which is the higher consciousness. So then great things will start to happen to you as well. And I always share that with everybody because I don't think too many people know about it, but it's our job to educate everybody in that consciousness and those vibration levels in relation to our emotions.
Thank you.
Absolutely true.
That is the best thing. A lot of times I tell people often, my grandfather used to say one thing that has stuck with me for life. And I realized when I reflect on it, I realized how and why he would say that. He would say, live each day so you can sleep at night. That was a principle that he lived his entire life by. And in doing that, looking back at that chart that you just put up, if you're living each day so you can sleep at night, that means that your conscience is clear. That means you're able to vibrate on a higher level. That means you don't need excuses. You just don't need them.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, I love to build on that, Jill. I love to tell people, like, when you go to bed at night, have something that you've done during the day to be proud of. So for me, I have a nightly ritual and I have a morning ritual. My nightly ritual is to think back, what am I proud of most today? I'm proud I was a great dad today. I was proud that I got to participate in this panel. I'm proud that I did a great show tonight. So when you go to bed with that pride, guess what? That's your final thoughts before you go to sleep. When you wake up in the morning and you find gratitude before your eyes open, and then you set the intention for the day to find those proud moments, that loop starts to feed upon itself, and you start to build that confidence. You start to build that character. You start to build that integrity, so that where excuses were once problems, now they're those opportunities. And when we had fear about those, now we have excitement. So I love that you said that.
Wow, that's awesome.
Thank you. It's taken me 55 years to get this far.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Don't you wish you knew some of these things back when you were a teenager?
Oh, I want to go slap myself in my 30s. Come on, dude. But we all have to walk our walk. And that's why I tell people to watch the hero's journey, because it's so important to find out that those valleys, when we don't want to go through those valleys. For me, I'm kind of sick and twisted. When I go through that valley, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be learning from this? What am I supposed to gain from this? Because that leverage creates that legacy. And when we die, think about this, ladies and gentlemen, think about this. I was at a funeral once about 2008, and I thought, if I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And at that point, I thought about 10 or 15 people would show up, and they bring bottles of Jack Daniels and Motley Crue records and talk about all the stupid shit Chris did. And then I realized that wasn't the way I want to be remembered. So I lived on purpose from that point forward. And I went home and I wrote my own eulogy, so that in that eulogy, it said, Christopher Rausch will have fought for what's right and what's fair. He will have risked for which that mattered. And he will have left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. Ever since that day, I've been on point, and my life has been magnified in so much excellence and brilliance, not without its hard times. But when I realized that this is the legacy I'm living, that created that why, which ultimately manifests the how.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's powerful stuff.
Oh yeah. And you know, it's interesting how you found your purpose through that direction. You know, like you said, you were at a funeral, and that's when you're able to define what your purpose was through this life and
Yep.
what you just said. So it's interesting how you found that, you know, that such a positive and life-changing moment through something that can be perceived as dark and, you know, kind of a sad time.
You know, and I
Sid, Sid, I know. Sid, what are you writing down back there, man? I
Come
see
on,
his pen
Sid, give it to
moving.
me. Give it to us.
You know, I've heard a lot, and so it's caused me to reflect on things that have just been part of my life. And the idea of excuses, for me, it's in my book. Stop, listen, and feel. When you're in a hole, how do you get out of a hole? Stop digging in the dang hole. Stop digging. Stop. Just stop. I don't care what's going on. Just stop. Don't go any further. Just stop where you are. Observe where you are. And now listen to your thoughts. What are the thoughts, and are they taking you where you want to go? And now feel your way into it. So that's something that I do quickly, easily, and all the time. Stop, listen, and feel. Something's happening. I mean, we had a kid had a meltdown at camp. Stop. Like, for me, it was just like, all right, let me observe this kid. He just put his whole body in his shirt, pulled his arms in, and he's like, don't talk to me. And it was like, all right, let me stop. Let me be here with him. I just put my hand on his back. He relaxed, and I picked him up, like literally picked him up and said, all right, I'm hugging this kid right now because he doesn't believe anybody's going to be there with him. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And now I can't get him off my hip. Like that was yesterday that this happened. Today, he was with me everywhere I went. And he's like holding a seat at lunch. Like, and I said, hey, do you mind if I sit here? He said, I was hoping you would. Like that's the way it is. Like, so to me, stop, listen, and feel. That's what came up. When you talked about pride and what are you proud of at the end of the night, I always told my players this. Pride is preparation, repetition, intensity, discipline, and excellence.
Love
and that's
that.
what we strive for. That you got to have pride in yourself. You got to prepare. You got to rep it. You got to do it over and over again. Intensity. So you have an inward focus that allows you to stay the course. Discipline, which I said in the beginning, discipline is key for me. And then excellence. You will pursue excellence as much as you know excellence to be. And if you do that all the time, you will win at everything in life.
Yeah.
That's
Well
what I
said.
was thinking about.
You know, there was one thing that you said, Chris, and what I loved about your eulogy is that it was broad. It wasn't specific. It was broad.
Yeah.
And you know, your goal was to leave the world a little better than when you came in. And I think that's, you know, I love that about what you said.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just love it too. And thank you, Chris, for coming on too. We have to wrap up this segment as well because we only have 10 minutes remaining for the show. But to everybody, thank you so much for being here. If you're watching live or on the replay, to my Positivity Posse, this is Christopher Rouse and Jill Jenkins. And if you want to connect with them, here are their socials and their websites as well. We have Christopher Rouse, the NoExcusesCoach.com. And if you want to find him and his amazing content that he pumps out, you can find it at Christopher Rouse on Instagram. And then on LinkedIn, we do have Jill Jenkins as well, if you want to connect with her to learn more about everything and all the good work that she's doing as well. So to you two beautiful souls, thank you so much for being on here. And we really appreciate your time. And, you know, it's interesting, too, that not many people know is that everybody is still on the call. So if you guys want to chill out and hang out for the next 10 minutes, you're more than welcome to. And thank you so much for being on here again.
Absolutely.
Love you guys. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate everybody in the comments too.
All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you soon.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Wow. So much great content all squeezed into 2 short hours. And even then, it didn't feel like enough because we talked about so many different things, but really diving deep and to learn from one another is what this is all about. And Sid, thank you so much for bringing this up. And Christopher Casson, actually, like you said, you got it from him. Thank you for commenting and watching and just putting together, I guess, indirectly, this great show that we had today. So, Sid, what sticks out to you the most about what happened tonight?
I mean, what sticks out is that we have great people in the world doing great things. And I think for me, the more we elevate those people doing that, the more we lift them up in some way, I feel like that's what can be here. We have everything that we need that's great on earth. It's happening. And unfortunately, the media and misery sells. Misery loves company. Like, actually, loved is the opposite. Misery loves company and loves okay being alone. So there's that. And that to me is like, okay, so now since love is okay being alone, let's live love up a bit, bring peace to the world, that we all commit to it. Peace is possible in the world. We all have to do our job. So just do your part. Whoever you are, do your part and we'll have peace.
And your part can be something as big as going out and having a personal summit or writing your book, or it can just be going down the street and giving that person that you see that may be having a rough day just a compliment. Hey, like your shoes, I like your nails. And you'll see how quickly that person's attitude towards themselves in the world will change in the blink of an eye. So it doesn't have to be this great, amazing thing. As long as you're going out there and you're operating in that love, then that is what is going to change in your own world, but other people's world as well. And if you're changing other people's worlds, then they're affecting, many other people, and exponentially, you'll see the world start to turn into such a different place, and a positive place. And also as well, I want to talk about that love concept, right? And a lot of people think that, oh, well, all these other people in the world, they're evil. The world is full of just bad people. But I'm going to challenge you with this question. How could you possibly sit here after this entire episode, but just in general, how is it that you have that component of love inside of you and you show it with your family members and you show it to your pets, your animals, or your friends? How could you possibly think that you're the only person in the world that is capable of feeling that? As we've shown today, if it's within inside of you, then it's within every single one of us. And that's what you should be looking for in the world, because it is out there. And we have brought it together here today through the power of writing and healing, through the power of coming together through our differences, through finding excuses and moving through them, and then finding the success in the relationships. Through all of these different topics, we have shown to you that it is possible to achieve that peace and enlightenment. And Sid, thank you for coming on and really co-hosting this with me and really giving your inputs, because everything that you do say is intentional and is really contributing to our greatest and highest good, and ultimately leading us to peace.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And everyone, life is a party, so go out there and dance. Raise the vibration. Think about this. Everybody knows the person that is the life of the party. Be the life of the party wherever you go. Life is a party. Get out and dance. Peace.
Beautiful. I love that so much. And I just want to share before we turn the episode off and you rewatch this on the replay, right? Because I know you guys are all going to do that because there was so much content in here. You can't digest it all in one sitting. But before we do that, I just want to hear a word from our positivity posse as well, because this wouldn't be possible without you and your just constant love and support. And over 70,000 of you, I don't know if I shared this with you, but yes, we've reached over 70,000 viewers every single month. And it's just so amazing to be able to share this with you. So here is the Positivity Posse segment, which it is. Lou said such an amazing episode. Thank you so much for all the love. I'll go back and comment on the comments. We appreciate you doing that. Share the show with your peeps. Yes, 100%. You never know who you're going to help by you sharing this amazing content. Misty Lee, we have Writing with the Hearts. Jeanette says, what an amazing show. Thank you for the wonderful segments. Thank you for Sid and Sano. And what am I talking about? These 2 hours are starting to mess with me a little bit. But thank you to Dano and Sid for putting this together. Solely Dina says, be kind. Christopher Caston, thank you again for being a part of this as well. Going out to eat some churros to give love to yourself despite the sugar. Hey, it's nice to indulge in a little sugar from every time and time again, right? Well, no? You said no?
No, man, I haven't had sugar in 2 years.
Wow. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
What? 2 years? I'm about
that's
to
a
go
whole
after
nother
this
show, man. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, seriously. That's talk about discipline. But after this, I'm actually going to go enjoy my donut that I got in preparation for the show after. So Walt here says, amazing show, guys. People coming together. We got the peace. We got just so much love and just you can still just feel it going on. Sid, where can people reach you at if they want to reach out to you?
Right there, sidmcnary.com, and you can go to Sid McNary on all social media platforms. I'm available. Get a hold of me. Life is a party. Let's dance.
Let's dance, baby. And then for everybody, if you don't know, and you can see it on the screen as well, on my Instagram and TikTok, you can find me on Dose of Dano, here on YouTube or Facebook. Facebook is at Weekly Dose of Dano TV. YouTube is Dose of Dano. And if you want to reach out to collaborate or be on the show or become a sponsor for Weekly Dose of Dano TV, you can reach out to doseofdano@gmail.com. And then one more comment right here as well. It's funny because I'm looking at the backstage comments that everybody's dropping, and even everybody's still here from all of this great content. So thank you for dropping that. And right here it is. Bravo 70K. Yes, it is. So thank you everybody for being here. That is the end of our show. Please share this great content with everybody that you might need to share with your life, because they might not be, out there and saying what they need, but this episode might be exactly what they need to get on that path of peace, prosperity, and self-love. So everybody, thank you so much. That is the end for the episode. Thursday, we have Tom Murphy coming on. Absolutely former UFC fighter, now helps kids and in schools to talk about all of his great things. That episode is going to be electric as well. Thursday, 9 o'clock. I'll see you guys there. Thank you everybody for being here. And I'll see you on Thursday for the next episode. Peace, everybody.